The Italian Mafia boss found a beaten woman in the rain. You're safe now. Manhattan at 2:03 a.m. The city was drowning in rain. Neon lights blurred on the wet pavement, and thunder rolled above the tall glass towers. A figure stumbled out of the darkness. Isabella Santos, 27, her black hair plastered to her face, her bare feet splashing through puddles. Her blouse was torn. Her cheek, swollen purple. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Behind her, the echo of a man's voice still burned in her memory. You'll never leave me, Isabella. No one will believe you. Her lungs burned as she turned into an alley, clutching her ribs where his fists had landed. The rain was cold, but the terror inside her was colder. She ran past overflowing trash cans, the smell of gasoline and rain mixing in the air, until her legs gave out. She fell to her knees near a small bakery in Little Italy. The only light in the street was a flickering lamp above the door. Isabella crawled under its awning, hugging herself, trembling uncontrollably. Her breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. Please, she whispered to no one. Please just let me disappear. Her vision blurred. She thought about calling someone, but who? Her friends were gone. Her family was far away in Brazil. Evan had isolated her from everyone. For a moment, she closed her eyes and waited for the rain to wash her away. Cut to a black Maserati pulling up nearby. The door opened slowly. Expensive leather shoes stepped into a puddle. Rocco Vitale stood beneath an umbrella, a tall, broad man in a black coat. His gray-blue eyes scanned the street with quiet calculation. He just left a late meeting with his associates at a restaurant 2 blocks down. Little Italy was his territory, his kingdom, and nothing in it happened without his notice. But what he saw now made him pause. Under the flickering light, a young woman lay curled up against the doorway, soaked to the bone, shivering. He handed his umbrella to his driver. Stay in the car. Rocco crouched beside her, his voice low and calm. Hey, you're hurt. Isabella flinched, trying to shrink away. Her eyes widened when she looked up. This man didn't look like the kind of person you ask for help. His presence was powerful, dangerous even. But there was something in his tone, not pity, not curiosity, something like quiet authority. Please, she gasped. Don't call the police. Rocco frowned. He could see the bruises around her throat. The fear in her eyes wasn't from the rain, it was from something far worse. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. I'm not calling anyone, he said softly. You're freezing. Can you stand? She tried, failed, and nearly fell again. Without a word, Rocco slid one arm under her knees and the other around her back, lifting her easily. She was weightless to him. Who are you? She whispered weakly. He looked down at her, rain dripping from his hair, his jaw set in quiet anger at whoever had done this to her. Someone who doesn't leave people to die in the rain. As he carried her to the car, she managed to whisper, Why are you helping me? Rocco paused for half a heartbeat before answering. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Because you're safe now. Cut to, inside the Maserati. The car glides through the empty streets. Isabella lies against the seat, wrapped in Rocco's coat, barely conscious. Marco, his right-hand man, glances back from the passenger seat. Boss, you sure about this? Drive, Rocco replies flatly. She's coming with us. Rain streaks down the car windows as the city lights flash across Rocco's face. A man known for violence, feared by many, now silently watching over a stranger like she's the only thing in the world that matters. In her half-conscious state, Isabella hears him speak again, his voice fading in and out through the storm. You're safe now, Bella. No one's going to hurt you again. Her lips part in a weak breath, the first time she's believed those words in years. The sound of rain fades into silence. When Isabella opens her eyes, she's lying in a soft bed, white sheets, dim light, the faint smell of coffee drifting through the air. Her wrists ache, her throat burns, but for the first time in hours she feels warm. She sits up slowly, blinking. The room is beautiful. Old wooden furniture, Italian paintings, a crucifix on the wall. But outside the window she sees something strange. Men with earpieces standing by the gates. Black cars. Security cameras. This isn't an ordinary home. The door opens and a man in his 50s enters, tall and built like stone. He's wearing a dark shirt, a gun visible under his jacket. You're awake, he says in a deep voice. Where am I? She asks, her voice trembling. Safe, he answers simply. The boss will see you soon. The man introduces himself, Marco Ferri, Rocco's most trusted man. He brings her water and painkillers. His face is unreadable, but there's a trace of kindness beneath the hard exterior. Cut to downstairs Rocco's study. The room is lined with shelves of old books and family portraits. A single photo catches Isabella's eye when she's brought in, a woman and a small boy both smiling. The woman looks radiant, alive. Rocco Vitale sits behind his desk, wearing a crisp shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled up. He's been awake all night, sipping espresso, reviewing papers. When he looks up at her, his eyes soften. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck," she says weakly. "Close," he replies. "You've been through hell. But you're alive." She hesitates before asking, "Why did you help me?" "You don't even know me." Rocco studies her face, bruised, scared, but still defiant. "You were in my street," he says. "That makes you my responsibility." His words sound almost like law, calm, commanding, impossible to argue with. Later that morning, Isabella walks carefully through the halls, still dizzy. The mansion feels more like a fortress, guards outside, cameras in every corner, marble floors that echo under her bare feet. She catches snippets of conversation from Rocco's men. "The Russians are back in the docks. Boss says we hold the line. No deals with Antonov, no matter what he offers." She freezes. The Russians. The name sends a chill down her spine. What kind of man is Rocco Vitale? Cut to the kitchen. Isabella sits at a long wooden table. Marco brings her a bowl of soup, simple, warm. "Boss says you should eat," he mutters. "He really doesn't have to." "He doesn't do things he doesn't want to," Marco interrupts, almost smirking. "If you're here, there's a reason." As he leaves, Isabella whispers to herself, "A reason? Or a price?" Cut to Rocco's balcony, night. Rain starts again outside. Rocco stands alone, cigarette glowing in the dark, staring over the city. Behind him, Isabella appears quietly, wrapped in a blanket. She hesitates before speaking. "I don't know what you are, but thank you." He glances at her, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to thank me. Just stay here. For now. You don't even know what I'm running from." "I don't need to," he says. "I saw enough." The silence between them feels heavy but not uncomfortable. Two strangers both hiding different kinds of pain. Isabella looks down at the city lights. "You live like a king," she says softly. "A king?" He almost laughs. "No. Kings sleep easy." He finishes his cigarette and looks at her one last time before walking away. "Get some rest, Isabella. Tomorrow we'll talk about what comes next." She watches him disappear down the hall, and for a moment she wonders if she stepped out of one danger and into another, or if she's finally found the one man the world itself fears enough to keep her safe. As thunder rolls again over Manhattan, she whispers to herself, "Who are you, Rocco Vitale?" The storm had passed, but the city still looked gray. Isabella sat on the edge of the bed in one of Rocco's guest rooms, her bruises fading but her thoughts restless. Every sound, the footsteps in the hall, the deep male voices downstairs, reminded her she was living in a world she didn't understand. She walked to the mirror and saw her reflection, the bruises, the cut lip, the exhaustion. She barely recognized herself. "You're safe now," she whispered, trying to believe his words. Cut to the kitchen. Rocco sat at the long oak table with Marco, reviewing files and sipping his morning espresso. When Isabella entered, the men stopped talking. Rocco motioned to the seat across from him. "Sit," he said, his tone calm but firm. She hesitated, then sat. He slid a small plate of warm bread toward her. "Eat something." "You don't have to feed me," she murmured. "I don't do anything I have to," he replied, echoing Marco's words from before. The silence that followed was awkward but heavy with curiosity. She studied him, the way he held himself, precise and quiet, like a man who didn't need to prove power because it already lived in his presence. "You're Rocco Vitale," she finally said. "I've heard that name before." Rocco didn't look up from his coffee. "I imagine you have. They say you're dangerous." He gave a faint smile, the kind that hides pain. "They say a lot of things. Doesn't mean they're true." "And are they?" His eyes finally met hers, gray-blue, sharp enough to cut through lies. "Depends who's asking." Cut to, later that day, the garden courtyard. Isabella wandered outside, drawn by the quiet sound of running water. She found Rocco there, trimming vines from an old rose bush. The contrast startled her, the feared Mafia boss gently tending flowers with bare hands. "You garden?" she asked softly. "My wife planted these," he said without looking up. "She said roses only grow for patient men." I didn't believe her. But she was right. There was a long pause. "Where is she now?" Isabella asked carefully. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost fragile. Gone. Russians. Wrong time, wrong place. Her breath caught. I'm sorry. He nodded, but his expression didn't change. I buried her and my son the same day. The silence that followed felt like a wound opening in the air. Rocco turned away, setting down the shears. You don't need to pity me, Isabella. Everyone loses something in this world. Some of us just lose more. Cut to evening, the library. Rocco sat reading an old leather-bound book. Isabella entered quietly, holding a steaming cup of tea. You look like you need this, she said, setting it down. He raised an eyebrow, amused. You're brave, walking into my office uninvited. You saved my life. I think that buys me a few passes. For the first time he laughed, a deep, quiet sound that made her heart race a little. Maybe it does, he admitted. They sat across from each other in silence for a while. The fire crackled softly. You ever think about leaving all this? She asked. Every day, he said. But this life doesn't let you leave. It owns you. He leaned back, his gaze distant. You remind me of her, you know. My wife. She had that same look, like she wanted to run but didn't know where to go. Isabella looked down. I'm not her. No, he said quietly. You're not. But maybe you're the reason I remember how to be human again. Cut to late night, Rocco's balcony. Rain began to fall again, light and steady. Isabella stood by the door watching Rocco smoke, his silhouette outlined by city lights. I used to paint, she said softly. Before him. Before everything. Why did you stop? He destroyed my studio. Said art makes me weak. Rocco turned his head toward her, eyes dark. Then he's a fool. The things that make us feel alive are never weakness. He stepped closer, his voice lower. If you ever want to paint again, I'll make sure you have everything you need. Their eyes met, and for the first time neither looked away. The air between them changed, softer, deeper. Then, as if realizing the moment had gone too far, Rocco turned back toward the rain. Get some rest, Isabella. Tomorrow will be complicated. As she left the room, Rocco whispered to himself, just loud enough for the thunder to swallow his words. You don't belong in my world. But God help me, I don't want you to leave it. The sun was setting over Manhattan. Street vendors packed up their stands, laughter drifted from a nearby cafe, and for a moment, the world outside Rocco Vitale's mansion seemed peaceful. Inside, though, peace was a fragile illusion. Rocco sat in his study, the glow of his desk lamp reflecting off stacks of documents. Marco stood beside him, voice low and grim. We got word from the docks. Antonov's men are moving shipments again, without permission. Let them, Rocco said calmly, not looking up. Boss, that's not all. They were asking questions. About a girl. Rocco's pen froze midline. Marco continued. They said an American businessman paid for information. Name's Evan Cross. Rocco's jaw tightened. His voice turned cold. The man who hurt her. Yes, boss. He's working with the Russians now. Wants her back. Rocco leaned back in his chair, silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his tone was steady, dangerous. No one touches her. Not him. Not Antonov. Not anyone. Cut to, upstairs, Isabella's room. She stood by the window, watching the last streaks of sunlight fade. She felt restless, trapped between gratitude and fear. Every time Rocco looked at her, she saw a storm in his eyes. A man who'd done terrible things but somehow found the strength to be gentle with her. When she came downstairs, Rocco was waiting in the main hall, already dressed in his black coat. Where are you going? She asked. Business, he replied. What kind of business? The kind you shouldn't ask about. Rocco. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but Marco. He didn't raise his voice, but there was something final in his tone. She watched as he left, his car disappearing into the night. Cut to the docks, midnight. The rain had returned, light but cold. Rocco and a few of his men stood by the water, waiting. A Russian SUV pulled up, headlights slicing through the fog. Out stepped Mikhail Antonov, tall, pale, dressed in a dark overcoat. Rocco Vitale, Antonov said in a thick accent. Always a pleasure to see the Italian king still breathing. I didn't come for pleasantries, Rocco replied. You're moving product on my docks. Your docks. Antonov smirked. Nothing belongs to anyone forever. Times change. Rocco's voice stayed calm. Stay out of my streets, Antonov. And stop asking about the girl. Antonov's smile faded. Ah, so the rumors are true. The great Rocco Vitale hiding a woman in his house? A fragile, pretty little thing. I wonder how much she's worth to you. Marco's hand moved toward his gun, but Rocco raised a finger. Not yet. You don't want to find out, Rocco said quietly. We will see, Antonov replied with a smirk. Good evening, Don Vitale. As the Russians drove away, Rocco stared into the fog, his jaw clenched. He knew what that smirk meant. This wasn't over. Cut to the mansion, 2 a.m. Isabella sat in the library, unable to sleep. She heard the door creak open, Rocco returning, soaked from the rain. His expression was unreadable. Did something happen? She asked softly. Nothing I can't handle, he said, taking off his coat. But she could see it, the tension in his shoulders, the faint tremor in his hand as he poured himself a drink. She stepped closer, her voice small. This is because of me, isn't it? Don't start with that, he said firmly. They're after me. You could get killed because of me. You think I'm afraid of dying? He snapped, then immediately regretted it. Silence filled the room. He set his glass down slowly. I've lived with death for 20 years, Isabella. But I won't let it take you. She swallowed hard, tears filling her eyes. Why do you care so much? He turned to her, his eyes fierce, vulnerable, raw. Because I know what it's like to lose someone you were too late to save. Cut to, later that night, the hallway. Unable to sleep, Isabella wandered to the grand staircase. She looked down to see Rocco sitting alone on the couch, a gun beside him, staring at nothing. She whispered to herself. He saves everyone but himself. Cut to the next morning. Isabella makes a decision. She quietly packs a small bag, just her sketchbook, a sweater, and the necklace her mother gave her. She knows the danger is because of her. If she stays, Rocco could die. As she opens the door to leave, Marco catches her. Where are you going? I can't stay here. It's not fair to him. You walk out that door and he'll tear the city apart looking for you. Better that than burying me. Marco looks at her for a long moment, then steps aside, reluctantly. God help you, kid, he mutters. Isabella slips into the street, the morning mist wrapping around her like a warning. Final scene, the docks, a few hours later. A black van slows down beside her. Before she can react, two men step out. One of them grabs her arm. Miss Santos, your boyfriend misses you. She screams, but no one hears. The van door slams shut, and it speeds off toward the river. The camera pans up to the skyline. The same rain, the same city, only now the hunter has become the hunted. Thunder cracked over the East River. The storm had returned, harder, colder, merciless. Inside a dim warehouse near the docks, Isabella Santos sat tied to a metal chair, her wrists bruised, her face streaked with tears and rainwater dripping from the ceiling above. Across from her, Evan Cross paced slowly, his expensive shoes echoing on the concrete floor. His once handsome face was twisted with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? He hissed. You embarrassed me. You made me look weak. Isabella glared up at him, trembling but defiant. You did that yourself. Evan's hand lashed out, a hard slap that echoed through the empty warehouse. She didn't cry. She just looked away, blood on her lip, whispering under her breath. He'll come for me. Evan laughed cruelly. Oh, that old gangster? Please. He's nothing outside of Little Italy. But deep down, even Evan's arrogance couldn't drown out the unease in his gut. Because he knew the kind of men Rocco Vitale commanded, and the kind of silence they left behind. Cut to Rocco's mansion. Moments earlier, Marco burst into Rocco's office, soaked from the rain. Boss, they have her. The Russians picked her up near Canal Street. They're working with Cross. Rocco stood up slowly, calm but deadly. Where? Warehouse 19 East River. Rocco opened the drawer of his desk and took out his gun, a black Beretta, polished and loaded. Get the car. Call every man we have. No survivors. Marco hesitated. Rocco, if we start a war tonight? Then so be it. He pulled on his gloves and looked out the window, rain streaking the glass. They took the wrong woman. Cut to the docks, 1:10 a.m. The black Maserati stopped a few blocks from the warehouse. Thunder rolled across the sky as Rocco stepped out, coat whipping in the wind. His men, a dozen loyal soldiers, spread out silently behind him. He adjusted his cufflinks and spoke softly. No noise until I say so. We go in, we take her, we end this. The men nodded. As lightning flashed, Rocco looked up toward the warehouse roof, guards with rifles, shadows moving inside. He took a breath, then whispered the command. Move. Inside the warehouse. Evan was still shouting, drunk on anger and power, while the Russians counted stacks of cash. Isabella barely noticed the faint sounds outside: footsteps, wind, the metallic click of guns being loaded. Then the lights cut out. Darkness. Silence. Evan spun around, panicked. What the hell? A shot rang out. One of the Russians dropped. Screams. Confusion. Flashlights flickering. Another shot, another man down. The rest scrambled for cover, shouting in Russian. From the shadows, a deep voice echoed through the building, cold, steady, terrifying. You should have stayed out of my city. Evan froze. Rocco. Rocco stepped into the light, rain-soaked, his gun raised, eyes blazing with fury. He moved with precision. One shot, one body, no hesitation. His men followed, clearing the room like a storm tearing through glass. Evan grabbed Isabella by the arm, pulling her in front of him as a shield. Stay back, or she dies. Rocco stopped, gun steady, his breathing controlled. You think she's the one you can use against me? He said, his voice quiet but dangerous. She's mine. Evan shouted. You hear me? Mine. Rocco took one slow step forward. No, he said. She's not. He fired once. The bullet hit Evan clean, between the ribs. Evan's eyes widened, the gun falling from his hand as he crumpled to the floor. Isabella screamed, shaking, but Rocco was already there, kneeling beside her, cutting the ropes around her wrists. It's over, he said softly. You came for me, she whispered, her voice breaking. I told you, didn't I? He said, his tone barely audible over the rain outside. You're safe now. Cut to outside the warehouse. Police sirens echoed in the distance, faint but closing in. Rocco's men loaded her into the car, while Marco urged him to leave. Boss, we need to go, now. Go, Rocco ordered. I'll cover you. Rocco. That's an order. Marco nodded and sped off with Isabella. Rocco stood in the doorway of the burning warehouse, smoke rising, rain pouring, watching the life he'd built descend into war. He holstered his gun, staring at the horizon. For the first time in years, his heart wasn't numb. It was terrified, not for himself but for her. Cut to the car, Isabella's POV. She sat in the back seat, shaking, clutching Rocco's coat that Marco had wrapped around her. He's not coming? She asked. He'll find us, Marco said. He always does. She looked out the window, the city lights blurring through the rain, and whispered, Please God, bring him back to me. Final scene, the bridge over the East River. Rocco walked alone through the rain, sirens echoing in the distance, his body exhausted but his spirit unbroken. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands, his mind filled with her face, terrified, beautiful, alive. You're safe now, he murmured again, but this time it sounded like a prayer. The house was quiet, wrapped in a heavy stillness. Outside, the rain had stopped but the sky remained gray, like the city was holding its breath. Inside, Rocco lay unconscious on a leather couch in his office, a blood-stained bandage wrapped around his side. His shirt was torn, his breathing shallow. Marco sat nearby, cleaning his gun, eyes red with exhaustion. The door creaked open. Isabella Santos stepped in, wearing one of Rocco's shirts over soft cotton pants. Her face was pale, her wrists still raw from the ropes, but her eyes, those dark, determined eyes, were steady now. How bad is it? She asked quietly. Marco didn't look up. Bad enough. He took a bullet saving you. Grazed his ribs, missed the artery by luck alone. She moved closer, her voice trembling. He needs a doctor. Can't risk it. Too many eyes out there. We called in one of ours. Isabella knelt beside Rocco, her fingers brushing his hand, cold and rough, yet familiar. He saved me, she whispered. Again. Marco stood. He'd do it again without thinking. Why? She asked softly. Marco looked at her for a long moment, then said, Because you made him feel something he thought was dead. The rain started again, soft this time, gentle against the windows. Rocco stirred, groaning quietly. Isabella rushed to his side. Hey, easy, she whispered. You're safe. He blinked, disoriented, eyes trying to focus. When they did and he saw her face, he exhaled a shaky breath. Isabella? You're home, she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. You found me. You kept your word. He tried to sit up, wincing. She gently pressed a hand to his chest. Don't. You need to rest. He caught her wrist, not hard, just enough to hold her still. Did they hurt you? No, she said, shaking her head. Not after you came. His grip loosened. Good. Then quieter. I told you to stay. She smiled faintly through tears. You tell everyone what to do. I'm not everyone. For the first time in days he laughed, weak but real. Sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling across the marble floors. Isabella walked into Rocco's study carrying a tray, coffee, eggs, toast. You should be in bed, she teased. Beds for the weak, he murmured, taking the coffee. She sat across from him, studying his face, the lines of pain, the scar on his jaw, the quiet sadness in his eyes. Do you ever stop fighting? She asked. When I'm dead. You'll die young that way. Probably, he said with a faint smirk. But at least I'll die protecting something that mattered. And what's that? He met her gaze. You. Her heart skipped. The words hung in the air, heavy, impossible to ignore. She looked down, whispering, You don't have to save me anymore, Rocco. I know. Then why do you still care? He leaned forward, eyes softening. Because when I look at you, I don't see the broken girl I found in the rain. I see the one thing in this world that still feels pure. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know whether to cry or smile, so she did both. Rocco stood watching the city, a cigarette burning slowly between his fingers. Isabella appeared beside him, holding something in her hands, a small canvas and a box of paints Marco had brought for her. You're painting again, he said quietly. You told me to. I didn't think you'd listen. You're not the only one who doesn't follow orders, she said, smiling. He watched her set up the easel, dipping her brush into paint. The first few strokes were shaky, but then her hand steadied. Colors began to take shape, grays, silvers, and deep blue hues. What is it? He asked. You, she said. The night you found me. He looked at her, her focus, her peace, and something inside him finally broke free from years of bitterness. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You brought life back into this house, Isabella. You brought life back into me. She turned to him, the paintbrush trembling in her hand. Their eyes locked, the space between them suddenly too small, too fragile. Rocco reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His thumb lingered on her cheek. If I kiss you now, he whispered, I won't be able to stop. Then don't, she breathed. He kissed her, soft at first, then deeper, like two souls finding each other in the ruins of their pasts. When they finally pulled apart, Isabella rested her forehead against his. You can't protect me from everything, she murmured. Maybe not, he said, smiling faintly. But I can try. That night. Isabella painted in the soft glow of lamplight. On the canvas, Rocco's figure stood in the rain, powerful yet broken, eyes full of pain and purpose. She looked at it for a long time, then whispered, You saved me, Rocco Vitale, but maybe I'm saving you too. The camera pans out, the quiet hum of the city below, the soft light of dawn on the horizon. 6 months later, Manhattan Art Gallery. Soft jazz played in the background. People in elegant clothes moved through the gallery, glasses of champagne glimmering under the lights. The walls were lined with Isabella Santos' new collection, paintings filled with rain, firelight, and shadow, every canvas whispering stories of pain and survival. In the center of it all stood the painting everyone stopped to stare at. The Night He Found Me. It showed a man kneeling in the rain, his coat heavy with water, his hand reaching out toward a broken woman, a scene of both despair and hope. Isabella, dressed in a sleek black gown, smiled politely as people congratulated her. But her eyes kept flicking to the door. Still looking for him? Marco asked, appearing beside her with a grin. He said he'd come, she murmured. Boss doesn't break his promises, Marco said. Just, sometimes he takes the long way to keep them. Rocco Vitale stood across the street, hidden beneath a dark coat and cap. The cold wind brushed against his face as he watched her laugh, radiant and free. For the first time in years she looked untouched by fear, alive. He smiled faintly, a mix of pride and sorrow in his eyes. She doesn't belong to this world, he muttered. Neither do you anymore, said Marco, who had joined him. You think? I know. You walked out of it the night you took that bullet. Rocco watched her for a long time, then exhaled. Every man has to die, Marco. But not every man gets to leave something beautiful behind. He crossed the street. Moments later. The crowd parted slightly as Rocco entered. The room seemed to fall quieter, like his presence carried its own gravity. People whispered his name, Vitale, unsure if they should approach or stay away. Isabella turned, and when she saw him, the world stopped moving. He looked different. No suit. No ring. No shadow of the boss. Just Rocco, simple, tired, human. You came, she whispered. Wouldn't miss your first show, he said softly. Though I didn't realize I'd be the main attraction. She smiled, tears forming. That painting, it's us. Yeah, he said, eyes lingering on it. But it's more than that. It's what came after. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I've been thinking, Bella. Maybe it's time I stop being the man in the rain. What do you mean? I'm leaving. Maples. Somewhere quiet. No men with guns. No debts. No blood. Her chest tightened. You're leaving me? No, he said, reaching for her hand. I'm asking you to come with me. The air between them went still. Every sound, the music, the chatter, blurred into nothing. I have a life here now, she said. The gallery, my art. You can paint anywhere, he interrupted gently. But I can't breathe anywhere else but near you. Isabella looked at him, the man who once ruled half the city now standing before her like a man who just wanted peace. If I say yes, she whispered, do you promise no more blood? I promise, he said, his eyes steady. For you, I'll be the man she wanted me to be, the man I should have been all along. Cut to, later that night, rooftop overlooking the city. The lights of Manhattan stretched endlessly below them. Rocco leaned against the railing, cigarette in hand, while Isabella stood beside him, wrapped in his coat. You know, she said softly, I used to think safety meant walls, locks, alarms. But I was wrong. What does it mean now? It means you. It means peace that isn't quiet, it's just real. He smiled faintly. You talk like a poet. You kiss like one, she teased. He laughed quietly, then turned serious. The world I came from, it'll never stop looking for me. Then let them look, she said, stepping closer. We'll already be gone. She took his hand, squeezing it tightly. Let's go home, Rocco. Where's home? He asked. Wherever it rains, she whispered, and you're there to say you're safe now. A plane takes off under a stormy sky. And a small coastal town in southern Italy. Sunlight, waves, and a quiet villa with roses climbing the walls. And Isabella painting by the sea, Rocco sitting beside her, reading quietly, his gun finally locked away in a drawer. Isabella. He found me in the rain when I was nothing but a broken girl. I thought he saved my life that night. But the truth is, we saved each other.